Hi everyone. Welcome to tonight's Scholastic Mini PD session on Google+. This one is focused on fostering a growth mindset in all children. We're expecting this to last about 30 to 40 minutes, with the last 10 minutes being dedicated to Q&A with our panelists here. We are missing one panelist who's just having some technical difficulties, so he'll be hopefully joining us momentarily. But So one thing to keep in mind, please feel free to post any questions you might have on the right side of your screen in the Q&A box there. We'll be keeping an eye on those and helping to facilitate some conversations at the end with your questions. You can also post questions on Twitter. We'll be keeping an eye on the hashtag MiniPD to answer those. Without further ado, I want to introduce Eduardo here. I'm hoping that the three panelists on the call here can quickly introduce themselves, and then Eduardo is going to present some information to everyone. So, Eduardo?
Thanks, Tyler. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Mini PD today. I'm Ed Briseño. I am the CEO of Mindset Works, which was founded by Carol Dweck and Lisa Blackwell and some other people to help schools foster in students a growth mindset and the motivation to learn and to take ownership of their learning. So we'll talk more about that, but that's me. Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Deal, and I'm a curriculum specialist with Mindset Works, and I was a teacher for many years and an instructional coach, and I taught Brainology back when it was a new program.
I'm Cheryl Green-Hillenbrand. I am a middle school science teacher in DC Public Schools. I've been teaching for 6 years, and this year I taught my students about mindsets in my science class.
And we may have Professor David Doctorman with us. Do we have your audio, Doc?
I don't know. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Well, I'm low tech, and I don't know how long I'll last, but hi.
Hi, Doc.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Doc, to our participants today?
Sure. So I'm David Doctorman. I'm on the faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and I'm also the Chief Architect Learning Sciences at Scholastic. And I work on implementing valuable research, and growth mindset is part of that valuable research that I've been working to implement for the last several years.
Great, thank you. So, Doc, would it help if I start with talking a little bit about what the growth mindset is and why we think it's important?
That'd be great.
Okay, so the growth mindset is a belief. It's a key belief that drives our behavior, and in particular our behavior to learn and to improve ourselves and to grow ourselves. And it's a belief that our intelligence and abilities are up for us to develop as opposed to being fixed. So for example, as opposed to believing that I'm not a math person or that I am a math genius, both of those are fixed beliefs. Believing that whatever math skills I have today is because of what I've done in the past, and I can change that, and I can continue to develop my math abilities. Or it can be the ability to write, or to make friends, or to be humorous, or to play sports, or drive, or anything else. So we can have on any of these abilities a fixed mindset, see it as that's the way we are, or we can have it as a growth mindset, as something that we can continue to improve on. And when we have the understanding that we can improve our abilities, then we become interested in improving our abilities, so that becomes our learning objectives. We see effort as a positive thing, something that everybody can benefit on, as opposed to something that is only for the weak or incapable people. And when we face setbacks, we persevere, and we try to find different strategies. We ask for help. We find a way to get through those challenges in order to meet our goals. So often when students are not working hard, or they're not thinking deeply, or asking questions, or doing their homework, often we ask them to do those things because we know that those things will enable them to succeed, like do your homework, or try hard, or show up to class. But when people see their abilities as fixed, something that they can't change, then the logic of doing those things is just not there. So rather than addressing those behaviors directly, what the research has found is that addressing the belief and having people understand how belief and intelligence are malleable and not for us to change, then that drives the other behaviors, and then they can really be open to doing the things that are going to enable them to succeed. So that's a little bit on mindset. Doc, do you want to facilitate, or if you're having audio problems, I'm happy to take over that role.
I think that might be safer till I get this thing really working.
Okay, sure. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about how you have worked to bring a growth mindset either to you personally or to your schools, in the schools that you have worked with, either with adults or with students?
Yeah, I would like to. You know, when you first start hearing about this and reading about growth mindset, it feels like something that you know, everybody needs to know about, you know, and you start seeing it everywhere, and you see it in yourself a lot too, and you start to notice like, oh my gosh, I'm being fixed-minded, and it's such a process to make that change all by yourself, and so I found that it was a lot more helpful to have other people I would kind of have in my tribe, you know, for lack of a better word, who we were kind of working on it together. So we would share the book, share a lot of articles, and just kind of get a group of people around me who kind of really wanted to change their mindsets too, so that we could kind of support each other in that journey, because you need people you can trust around you who you can kind of examine when you're kind of having fixed-minded practices or having fixed-minded thoughts, trying to figure out how to work with fixed-minded students, and really work together to try to change it, because it's just so deep in our culture to be pretty fixed-minded. So that would be my advice, and what we did was just to share a lot of articles and build a tribe and really support each other in a trusting way. So. And
how about well, when Emily referenced the book, she was talking about Carol Dweck's book called Mindset. But Emily, can you talk a little bit about what got you and your colleagues interested in mindset and putting this effort into this learning journey together?
Yeah, it was a combination of two things. So first, you know, we just had a lot of frustration around motivating students, and also as leaders in our school, motivating our staff members to kind of try to do more for kids. We do so much as teachers, so to ask anyone to do more just felt like it was an unfair request. So so we had that feeling of not knowing how to motivate people, along with just that article, How Not to Talk to Your Kids, and we felt like this might be the key to it. And so that's kind of where we started.
Great. Yeah, so How Not to Talk to Your Kids was an article, I think, in the New Yorker magazine, and it's a fantastic article that talks about how the way that we speak develops a fixed mindset or a growth mindset in students. Because students develop their beliefs by their observations of the world. And so that is an article that helps us be more mindful about the language that we use and what that communicates to students. So Trilby, can you talk a little bit about what got you and your colleagues interested in mindset, and then what you did as a result of that?
Sure. I think at DC Public Schools, a lot of the schools that got interested in it and signed up for the pilot program were interested in targeting middle school students and teaching them skills that would allow them to become active learners and understand the role that they play in their own learning and in their own determining their own success. I know my principal was really excited for our students to learn about how their brain works and understand that they can actually take action to become smarter and get better grades, and that it's not something out of their reach and they're not predetermined as good students or bad students, that they can actually go ahead and change that. And once the teachers heard that, we thought that sounded great, and we're excited to try it out with our students this year.
Can you, if I can jump in a little bit, and assuming people can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great. Can you give some examples of what that language is? what do you say to students in a growth mindset way that's different from what you said to students before?
Sure. I think that's one of the ways that my teaching practice has changed is in the feedback that I'm giving students. When I have students who are struggling, I reinforce for them that, you know, if you practice this, you work hard at it, you ask for help, you can learn to do it and be successful at it. And often students respond positively to that rather than shutting down and not trying anymore. They keep working at it and then see that, oh yes, if I keep practicing these types of problems, I will get it, and then it will be easier for me. And when students are successful, then pointing out for them the strategies that they use, like, oh, I saw that you studied for this test using flashcards. I think that that strategy really helped you do well and earn this grade that you got. So really calling out for them the learning strategies that they're using and why it is that they were successful or not successful based on what they did to prepare.
Right. Emily, are there things that you used to say that you said, I can't believe I used to say that to my students?
For sure. I always used to tell my students, you know, I always get the good class, you know, of course they put all the smart kids in my class, and I thought that was a way of praising them that would motivate them, instead of what I changed to, which was, look at how hard we've worked, look at how far you've come, look at what this looked like before and what it looks like now. Because when I was praising for how smart you are, you know, it left kids out, and it you know, supported that fixed-minded thinking of, if this being fast at something is what makes me smart, then when I'm slow at something, maybe I'm not smart at that. So it really changed, and we started putting up signs that said things like, make more mistakes today, you know, go out there and make more mistakes, kind of like on the exit of the classroom, and just changed, you know, how we kind of treated thinking and learning in the classroom as much, you know, it's okay to be slower, it's okay to be more deliberate, that kind of thing.
It really sounds like a lot of this is changing the expectation that learning isn't about getting it quickly, and that the norm is that it's effortful, you make mistakes, you learn from those mistakes, and that makes it okay for students to do. Ed, when you bring mindset to different schools and students get stuck, right? I mean, we all get stuck, right? So it's not like giving them the right kind of praise gives them knowledge they didn't already have. So what kind of strategies, how do you teach students to begin to help themselves when they hit obstacles?
Well, first, the core of it is a combination of having them develop the belief and having them develop the strategies. So the belief can be developed in different ways. One key way that has been shown in the research many times, and that we use a lot in our program, is something that Trilby referred to, which is teaching students how the brain becomes smarter when we work hard to improve ourselves. And that just showing them research studies and studying the way the brain works and the way that our thinking becomes more powerful depending on the things that we do. Kids become empowered when they learn that. They say, oh my God, I'm not stuck with the brain I have. I can actually become better at whatever I set myself to get better at. That's really motivating. But that gives them the motivation, but it doesn't give them the behaviors of what to do. So they might say, oh my God, I can become anything that I want to be. Great. Now what do I do? Or they might have a misconception about what to do. Like they might think that hard work is just about getting in front of a piece of paper and spending a lot of hours staring at it, or trying something again and again and again, even if it's not working, rather than searching for different strategies and searching for ways to learn more effectively, and to ask for help and to try to solve problems in different ways, etc. So it's a combination of that, developing the belief and developing the self-management and the learning strategies that are going to enable students to be successful. And then that is some explicit work to teach that and to learn that together as a community, the adults and the students. And then it's something that you can support on a daily basis, like when you frame lessons and you're going to learn math, you can just really quickly say, remember, we're going to push ourselves beyond what we already know today, so we're going to make mistakes and we're going to learn from those mistakes, rather than let's find the right answers as quickly as possible and move on to the next standard, which is just very different ways to approach a math lesson. So there's a lot of things that you can do in the way that you teach on a daily basis that supports a growth mindset.
And Trilby or Emily, how have you seen your students change in the way they respond? I mean, what do they do now?
So one of the big differences I noticed, I actually did Brainology with my 7th grade students, but I did not do it with my 8th grade students this year. And I noticed that when I was giving longer assignments, or we were taking a lot of notes, or something that the students might find challenging or not as interesting, my 7th grade students stopped whining about it. My 8th grade students would be like, oh, why do we have to do this? This is too much work. And the 7th grade students would kind of be like, oh, okay, and like get into it. And I noticed that like maybe 2 to 3 weeks after starting the Brainology program and teaching my students about mindsets, that was a big difference that I noticed in them.
That's great. Emily, you have some thoughts to add to that?
Only to back up what Trilby says is that it takes time, you know, that when we've seen the changes in kids, it usually took like 3, 4, 6 weeks, but then it was like a light switch, you know, and all of a sudden they're kind of really jumping up and down, excited when they learn something. When they click something in the classroom, they're doing that like, oh yeah, kind of thing, you know, that kids will do, and it just feels so good. But it takes time, you know, it takes a lot of weeks for them to kind of experience that, okay, so if I go ahead and take the risk to try a new strategy, and I go ahead and take a risk to participate and make mistakes in front of other people, then I'm actually going to learn something. But it's just so kind of difficult to manage between changing their belief and changing their habits, you know, but you just keep going, and it really does work. So
I like the way you use the word changing their habits. It's sort of the beliefs feed the behavior, and you want the behaviors to become their habits. And so how do you connect this to the curriculum? And sort of, I mean, you could think of it in the Common Core language of the standards of practice in math, or in language arts, or in science, thinking like a scientist, or even more broadly, habits of mind. Do you make those connections? Have you worked to do that?
I definitely have in science class. I try to call out whenever my students are using strategies that they have learned through the Mindsets program. For example, if we're doing a mnemonic device, we studied those and learned what they were during Brainology, and then we use them in science class, and I call out for my students that, you know, we're using this and why are we using it, and remind them of why we do different study strategies that we are using. And I've seen them use it in other classes as well. My students were studying for a social studies test, and they were coming to show me all the flashcards they'd made and telling me they were practicing with a partner, and a game that they made up for themselves to keep themselves actively engaged in their studying. So I definitely do see them using it across different content areas, and recognizing that they are using strategies that are effective and that will help them.
That's great.
My example was going to be for writing, that kids usually think that you're a good writer because you set forth with a blank piece of paper and you just start writing all these beautiful things instead of understanding the process. So we showed them, you know, how you can write a little bit and then write a little bit the next day, change with feedback, change it a little bit the next day, change feedback, over 6 days' time, stapled them all together, made them compare day 1 to day 6. And they're like completely different crafts, and they failed to recognize that that's what good writers do. Good writers don't just sit down and start writing beauty. You know, they iterate with it, and so that was really motivating. And then kids would actually write instead of just kind of pushing a blank page away and feeling really overwhelmed by the task. So
that's great. There's some interesting research that Jiangdong Lin and I think Carol did together, Carol Dweck, on stories of struggle. And they did this in science and some other domains where they gave students, sometimes students read about famous, successful scientists, and they're what the researcher called stories of achievement. They're all about how great the scientists were and their amazing accomplishments, and it could be in any domain. And what they found is that actually depressed students' effort, because students thought, oh, they're so great, it came so easily to them, and if I can't do it easily, then I must not be good at it. And when she shared with them stories of struggle, of how much work it was, that you don't just sit down at a piece of paper, it could be about writers or whatever, and you heard about how hard it was for them and the failures that they had, perseverance and performance went way up for these students, because that's the way it works. That's the norm.
They start developing that belief. That's another way to develop the belief that abilities are built. We have this idea of geniuses or people who have excelled and done great things, and that's another way to study how people got there and develop that belief, just like you said.
Right. So how do you think about, there's the feedback, how do you think about grading students in a mindset, a growth mindset kind of environment where you kind of acknowledge that there might be more struggle for some students than others? How do you mesh those together? That seems like that'd be a hard thing to do.
Well, I mean, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, grading is definitely one of the strategies that we use in schools that send messages about what we value. And so, do we value just right answers, or do we value progress, for example? Are we measuring growth and learning in mastery? And is that something that we value, for example? Or, so first of all, the feedback that students receive, the most valuable feedback that adults receive or students, we want to value feedback that is substantive on the work that we do, on our skills, on how we want to get better. So we want students to, when they get something back, what they really be craving for is the actionable information on how can I get better, what can I learn from this. And so one way to do this is, first, not grade everything. So in particular, not grade when things are new and when we're learning something. The grade is really not that important. What we really care about is the substantive feedback that is going to help us improve. It's kind of like, I think I've heard you, Doc, use this example before of when we are in a soccer team practice. We're trying drills. We're trying to push our what we can do, and we're not grading ourselves. And when the game comes, that's really the assessment to see where we are in our mastery. That's a test. So first, don't grade everything. Just every once in a while, you can really test your mastery, and that tells you where you are at any particular point in time. Another thing that you can do is have multiple opportunities for mastery. So if students get something, turn something in, and they don't get the performance that they wanted, you can give them opportunities to get better and then retake that test. And that's what we want. We want them to get better and improve their mastery. And there's really no problem with having students retake a test if they want to put more effort into it. So those are a couple of ideas. Emily and Trilby, do you have anything, or Doc, do you have anything else to add?
Emily, Trilby?
I have a fun saying that I used to use with my students. It took a while to get them to buy in, but it was no points for practice. So just right along the lines of what Ed was describing, that every single piece of paper you write on in class does not get points because it's practice, and I'll give you some points when you're ready to show me that you've learned something. So that's one thing I did that I liked.
Right. Trilby, any thoughts?
I think this is an area I'd like to explore more as I learn more about growth mindsets myself. This was my first year implementing it in the classroom. I definitely think the way I talked to my students about the grades and the way that they saw their grades and changed, and that they started to see that when they showed that they had mastered and they worked harder or turned more assignments, more homework in, their grades would go up. And so I think understanding that their grades are more malleable and they represent their mastery is important, but I think it is an area that I could continue growing in and developing my own skills in that and understanding how growth mindsets fit with grades.
Right.
And as Trilby said, the language of that round grade is important. So if we focus on growth, that sends clear messages. Another idea is to be clear about grades and about what different levels of performance look like, so that students feel like they know how to get to different levels, and that is clear to them. It's not a mystery. So one example of how to do that is you can show at the beginning of a project or an assignment student work and see, like, this is what excellent student work looks like. This is where we're trying to get to, and here's why. And here's a rubric that is in language that students can understand, so that they know, and they can then later assess themselves or help somebody, assess their work in different dimensions, and then they can understand in what dimensions they need to improve in order to achieve excellence.
Yeah, and something else to add to that would be to show something that isn't perfect too, or that isn't exemplary student work, and deconstruct, what feedback would we give this person to get to the goal? Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Definitely. And I love your prior example, Emily, of showing, we always show this artwork or whatever else as the end product, and showing the process of how we get from a very rough draft to the end product is a very powerful way to have students understand how you can improve your abilities.
It's amazing how many students, when they have failure, think they're just dumb. And that's how you feel, then you surrender. And so changing that feeling, that belief, recognizing that everybody struggles, and that for some things naturally come easier to some than others. It's a lot easier to dunk if you're 7 feet tall than if you're 6 feet tall. But that doesn't mean that you're done in development. It's just you have a different starting point as a 7-footer than you do as somebody else. And so having people recognize their sort of natural ability as their starting point, but then you have to push yourself forward. It's not just struggling students who can suffer from a growth mindset. High-performing students can do it too, because my students at Harvard, they don't like to fail, and so they never take the risks that can lead to much deeper learning. So it's an attitude. So that belief system is really what underlies and allows students to persevere and to have grit. That's the result that comes from the belief that my effort will matter, that I can get better through hard work, and gaining more knowledge. Do we have time, Tyler, to keep going, or should we be taking questions?
Yeah, we have some time. There's a couple questions here. One is specifically about how growth mindset research overlaps with habits of mind philosophy. Is there something specific that one of you could say to that?
Sure. So habits of mind can be seen as strategies to manage ourselves, and so it's self-management strategies and learning strategies that are very concrete, and we can learn to get better at those things in order to become more effective learners or more effective people. It also gives us a common language to help one another grow. And so we can talk to one another around different language that we have agreed to as a school about what we value and what we think is important in order to thrive in this environment. Emily, I think you've done some work on habits of mind. Do you have anything to add on that?
I would have said the same thing, that growth. The dimensions of a growth mindset tell us that we want to embrace a challenge, and we want to be inspired by others' success, and we want to, leap over obstacles and things like that. And what habits of mind does is it gives us a little more concrete, examples of what that might actually look like day to day. But there's also some overlap. So.
Right.
Another good question here. Is about how can you educate parents on mindset. I don't know, Emily or Trilby, if that's something you've concentrated on. Is there something that that you as teachers talk to parents about to reinforce this at home?
I've done a lot of work with parents. So as an instructional coach, we did this work, and then right away principals were asking, can you come do a parent night or a parent morning? Parents absolutely love this, and if it's something that you're doing as a school, a lot of parents will come and they'll really love it. And just talking with them about how, the same kind of praise language and the feedback language and how it affects their children and motivation, and they just really buy into it because they want their children to succeed so badly, and they're just like us as teachers. We're saying things that we think are going to motivate the kids, and it's kind of having the opposite effect. And then I know as a mom, sometimes I don't want my kids to feel bad, and I want to say stuff like, it's okay, not everybody has to be good at that, and it's the worst thing I could possibly say to my children. I have to say, if it's really hard, that means you're going to learn a lot, and you just have to choose if you want to learn this or not. It's not, that you can't, it's a choice. So yeah, parents, eat this up.
Do you find it hard as a parent to find the new words instead of always saying, oh my gosh, you're so smart, you're such a little genius?
Yes.
Right? I mean, what are the things that you say? How do we help parents get a new vocabulary?
Yeah. So especially as a mom and a dad, you want to always tell your kids, how great they are. And so the one thing that I tell parents a lot is to switch to saying something like, I'm proud of you, or it's fun to watch you do that. It really works for us. But the other thing I would just warn against and caution against is creating, these, I've heard people call it praise junkies, where your kids are always looking to you to make sure you're watching, And I've started to say to my children, are you having fun? Do you need me to be watching you for you to enjoy learning that? And kind of go like, I don't think mommy needs to be watching you for you to, enjoy learning it. That's about what you want to do. And so to try to pull them off that praise, lollipop. So that's what we do.
Right. That's great. It's hard. You can't change grandparents, I understand.
Well, yeah. They come around.
Maybe.
So as we get to the end here, do you how about a parting shot from each one of you? Maybe one kind of key takeaway or bit of advice that you would offer to educators to go to school and use that tomorrow if they're still in school.
Sure, I'll take a stab. So one thing to think about is we often think about we know what all the things that students need are, like for example to put strong effort into things or to do their homework, and we often try to get them to do all those things, and that's a good thing. But my only observation is try not to get your eye off the beliefs that are behind those behaviors. And in particular, the growth mindset is the student seeing abilities and intelligence as something that the student can develop. And what can I do as an adult in order to foster that belief, in addition to working on all the other behaviors that result from that belief.
I guess my advice would be to find, a couple or more, if you can, like-minded educators at your school or just in your life who you can kind of talk about this with. And it could, because some of these topics are really tough to figure out how to apply them, like with grading and assessment, because there's certain grading and assessment things that are kind of just a part of the system we work in. So having a group of people that you can use as a support system for exploring how to get better at fostering growth mindsets, I think would be a great thing for any educator.
Trilby?
I would say it is a lot to take on to totally revamp your whole classroom to be a growth mindset classroom. And especially if you don't necessarily have a curriculum and support like I did this year. But I think that whatever small changes you can make just around feedback that you're giving students, or the language you're using to motivate students and encourage them when they are struggling with something, can truly make a difference. And I do see that even with my 8th grade students who haven't been through the Brainology program, the difference in the language that I use with them, especially when they're struggling, has had a positive effect, and I've seen them continue to try in situations where they were giving up before. And I think the only difference is how I am motivating them and the language I'm using to encourage them to continue trying.
The only thing I would add, I mean, this is great advice, is if you're just starting with this, to take a look at your own life and the areas of your life where you have a growth mindset and areas you have a fixed mindset, because we all have some of both. And as Carol Dweck often says, to learn how to listen to that fixed mindset voice and that growth mindset voice when it says, you know, I'm just not good at that, I'm not going to try it. And now you are like the students you're trying to reach. And so to see where it is in your own life and what you can do, because once you've made it a part of your life, it's a lot easier to bring it into the lives of your students.
Ditto.
Very true.
Fantastic. All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the people watching, and especially to our panelists here. There's a replay of this will be available on YouTube. We'll post it on our Google Plus page. And stay tuned for more mini PD sessions starting in August and throughout the fall. So we hope you enjoy them, and please give us feedback on our Google Plus page if you have any. So I guess that's it. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.